What's going on, guys? Matt Fraser here, and today we are going over some of the most common questions I've received over the years that are movement-based, goal-oriented based, and the mentality to follow through on them all. So let's get after it. All right, so the first goal that a lot of people have in the gym, or something a lot of people are striving for, is getting their first strict pull-up. So I think it's almost mandatory to be able to do strict pull-ups before you move on to the more complex movements like kipping pull-ups or butterfly. We want to have the strength foundation there so that when you do transition to kipping or butterfly, the kip is there for assistance. It's not there as a requirement to complete the movement. As I'm looking at the pull-up bar, I'm gonna first look at my hand positioning as I'm going up. My palms are gonna be facing away. So I wanna be aware that I'm not going so wide that I'm exclusively using back and almost taking my arms completely out of the equation. But you also want to be aware that your hands aren't too narrow, because as you come up, if your elbows are kicking out further than your hands, you're using biceps, but then little muscles in here that are really easy to pull. So we want to make sure that we have a good grip where we're getting a good mix of arm movement and back movement. The best analogy I always use for things like getting your first strict pull-up is if I were coming into the gym and my goal was to bench press 300 pounds, it's pretty obvious that it'd be the wrong move, or it's not gonna work, of coming into the gym, loading up 300 pounds and trying a rep every single day. Same thing with a pull-up. You're trying to progress to a pull-up. Don't just come in and try one every single day. Let's pull back the weight. The bench pressing example, I'm gonna do a lot of reps at 135 pounds, 185, 225, and progress my weight up as I cut the volume down. So training for a strict pull-up shouldn't be any different. So whether you're going on a pull-up bar, it's gonna keep the movement a little bit more realistic, or what you're gonna see when you're actually doing the movement. But you can go on a pull-up bar, bring a band down so you hook the band under your feet. It's gonna take away a lot of the weight that you're supporting. Or what I'm a big fan of is coming over to a machine, like a lat pull down machine, getting a nice wide bar so that I'm replicating my hand width when I'm doing the pull-ups. But then I'm gonna complete sets of 10 to 15 here at a much lighter load for multiple rounds, and hopefully over enough repetitions of this, it's gonna translate over to the actual pull-up. And then even once you get your first strict pull-up and you've achieved your goal, that doesn't mean that these training exercises go out the window. All the way through my career, I did banded pull-ups. It was the way that I accumulated a ton of volume without crushing my joints. I always did lat pull downs to work on those very specific muscle groups that I knew were gonna translate over to the pull-ups. Now that you have your strict pull-up down and you wanna try to progress to make them a little bit faster, we now have our kipping pull-ups. So with these, now we're no longer just pulling vertically with our arms. We are allowed to use our hips, generate some thrust to help us get our chin over the bar. The main thing I want to point out with these is, even once you have your strict ones and you've moved on to kipping, you should always practice your strict ones. The strict pull-ups are going to translate over to the kipping when it comes to endurance and strength. The biggest difference that I want to point out with the kipping pull-ups is going from the strict, you're pulling yourself vertically. You're hanging directly under the bar, you're pulling yourself up vertically, chin over, and then back down. With kipping, now we're changing a little bit. Now we're not pulling vertically. We're trying to keep our arms straight as long as we can. So we come to the front of the kip, we pull back, we engage our lats, and then as our body is rising, I'm trying to keep my arms straight until I see that I'm over the bar, and then I'm pulling myself in, show that my chin is over the bar, coming back out, and then coming into the next kip. So you should think of your body like a pendulum. That kip is just to get the pendulum up, and then once you're at the apex of that swing, you're technically weightless. You're not rising, you're not falling. And so it's there once you're horizontal, you're pulling yourself in horizontally, ideally, weightless or as close to as possible, instead of carrying that tension all the way through pulling vertically. So when you're kipping, think about keeping your arms straight a lot longer and then pulling yourself in horizontally instead of staying directly under the bar and pulling up. And the last piece too is, as you're doing this, you now need a counterbalance, because if you're pushing your shoulders behind the bar, keeping your arms straight, you need a counterbalance so your feet are out front. So what I think about is, as I kip, my feet come out front, my body comes back, I pull myself in horizontally, back out, and I'm keeping my toes raised the whole time. So this is where a lot of the cycling comes in. A lot of people, as they bring their chin into the bar, their feet drop under them, and now when they push back, their whole body pushes back and they're out of sync. So use your feet as a counterbalance, try to keep your arms straight until you're up and weightless, and then bring yourself in. All right, guys, I get a ton of questions on people asking, how can I get better at toe to bar? How can I get bigger sets? How can I work on my endurance? So I don't think there's one fix-all answer for everyone, but there's a lot of different variables that we can go over. So first, we're gonna talk about grips. So grips make a big, big difference. A lot of the grips that have holes in them, I never put my fingers in holes. I just wear grips that don't have holes. But as I'm coming up, I'm holding my grip in my pinky and my thumb. And then as I'm coming up to the bar, I'm trying to connect the bar here, catch it here, and then I'm pushing with my fingertips. So I'm trying to make the arc of my fingertips bigger than the arc on the grip. So then when pressure gets applied, this arc is shorter, so all your weight's getting pulled off there. So it's pulling off your wrist and not just exclusively your grip. Don't use that as a crutch, still work on your grip. So as I'm coming up, I'm aiming to get my wrist over the hook. Boom, right there. Keep my knuckles tall, pushing on the far side of the grip. And right there, it's like, for the most part, that weight's getting pulled off my wrists. I think what's really important too is figuring out what style of toe to bar you're doing based on the workout that's in front of you. You know, I would say 3 different styles of toe to bar. Maybe somebody can tell the difference. It's mostly just for me. But whether it's a single set of toe to bar in a workout that's nice and short, or a big group, a set that's 100, or 5 rounds of 25. It's like I'm going to approach each one differently. So the really short sets where I'm not coming back to it, maybe it's at the beginning of a chipper, there's 20 toe to bar and then you're not coming back to it. Those ones I'm doing, butterfly toe to bar. So after my toes touch, I'm tucking my knees to my chest and I'm trying to scoop my feet back behind me. So my feet aren't coming down, big long swing, changing directions and coming back up. It's my feet are coming down, immediately pointing behind me and then coming back up. So it's more of a circular motion, but these take a ton of energy. They're just a hair faster. So if you're in a situation where 1 second is going to make a difference, it doesn't matter if you use 20% more energy, you need 10% less time. So that's where those are good. The next up is going to be, think of a 5-round workout with 20 toe to bar per round. They're not huge sets, but the volume does accumulate throughout the workout. Those ones I'm doing the traditional toe to bar, toes coming down in front of you, changing direction with your feet behind the bar, coming back up. But what I'm thinking of while I'm doing those is staying as tight as possible. I'm not trying to let my feet drift 2 feet behind the rig for that transition. I'm thinking about keeping myself as stiff as a board so that as soon as my feet come down, it's like a stretch reflex, boom, right back up. One, I think it helps a little bit with the endurance, never disengaging your core and re-engaging it. I like just if I keep my hips tight, my hips are tight. So those ones, they're gonna cycle a little bit faster, but with that nice transition in the back, even once you hit terminal velocity on those, you're still able to sync up your breath with the movement as you're going through. Now the last one is gonna be if I have huge sets. So think like a chipper that has a set of 100 toe to bar in it or a buy-in of 100 toe to bar. Something along that volume where you're not going unbroken, but you're trying to make it as few sets as possible. With those, that's when I'm really stretching out my swing a lot further. One thing I want to note is I'm still not disengaging my core. I'm still feeling that tension in my core, but I'm allowing my body to drift a little bit back. I'm letting my hips and my knees bend a little bit more as they come back. So it may look a little bit sloppier, not as tight of a movement, but the entire idea behind that is giving myself the extra half a second on the backswing so I can catch a little bit more breath or I'm not under, that extreme tension as I'm snapping my feet through quite as often. So hopefully I can stretch out that set size a little bit more. All that being said, find what works for you. These are the styles of movement that really worked for me, but take them back to your gym, play with them, set them up in intervals where you're doing the super fast ones, the tight ones, and the stretched out ones all back to back. Play with them, see what set sizes you can hold, see what your paces are, see how fast it takes you to complete 10 in each style, and see if you learn something new, then you can apply it into your training. Hopefully it helps you out on the competition floor. All right guys, one of our most common and obviously our favorite movements is burpees. They are one of the simplest movements there are. Put yourself on the ground, pick yourself back up, but even a movement as simple as burpees depending on what the workout is, what the rep range is, I'm changing my movement to get the best end results possible. So first scenario is the short, fast set of burpees. So say we have a chipper and in the middle there's 10 or 20, only one set, we don't need to come back to them. So in this scenario, I'm concerned about my time, my speed is my number one priority, and I'm okay if I'm a little bit less efficient. So I'm going faster, but proportionally to the time I'm saving, I'm using a lot more energy. Your one and only concern is the amount of time that you're using. So at all costs, so with this, as I'm kicking down, I'm kicking both feet back at the same time, but I'm letting myself start free falling before I even have my hands down on the ground. So I'm just trying to save overall time, and time in a descent contributes to overall time. So as I come down, I'm going to try to catch that stretch reflex off my chest. I'm going to be bouncing off my chest a little bit, just that free fall and poof, quick exhale to help catch that bounce. It sounds silly. So once I pop my hips up and I'm bringing my feet up, I'm trying to get my feet as close to my hands as possible. So ideally my hands are only a couple inches away from the box, enough for space in my head. As I kick my feet up, I'm trying to get as close to the box as possible so I have less time, less distance to cover in a jump. Now, say you're doing a chipper and you have to do 100 burpees unpartitioned. Now, obviously we can't hold a sprint pace for all 100, or most of us can't. I want to stretch out the time of each movement. I want to work in, a breath in the middle of each movement so I can hopefully just work continuously for the entire set. So with these, my hand placement, my body position when I'm on the ground is going to be the exact same. I'm trying to get my head as close to the box as I can without hitting it, especially once you're tired or moving quickly. Now, I'm still kicking both feet back at the same time, but what I'm doing when I'm trying to slow them down a little bit is it's going to look a little bit like a worm, like the dance move, the worm. So I'm going to lead with my chest. I'm going to try to kick my heels up so that as I land, it's chest first, and then I'm just rocking. So I'm basically rocking into a seal stretch. So shoulders are high off the ground, hips are still down low, toes and knees are on the ground. And then from there, when I pop my hips, this is where the change is. I'm not going to be concerned about getting my feet up as close to my hands. I'm going to just focus on getting my hips up as high as I can, basically pushing your arms more like a wall walk instead of a push-up. Then once I stand upright, I want that gap between me and the box. So I'm not going straight into a jump from here. If I'm trying to slow down my pace and have a little bit more endurance, I want to kick up here, step, step, and then jump for every rep. So I want to create that horizontal momentum with that lead-in step, a little bit more of a stretch reflex. So I'm not concerned with getting my feet as close to my hands when I'm stepping up. But then I step into it, jump over, land on top of the box. Now, depending on what type of burpees you're doing, whether you're doing burpees on top of the box or burpees over the box. If I have to land on top of the box, show full extension at the top and then come back down. As I'm jumping up, I'm going to be more focused on actually getting height and landing with my knees more extended. I'm not doing a max vertical jump and trying to land with straight legs, but I definitely want to land with more than a 90 degree in my knees. I don't want to land here and then add in a full air squat on top of the box every single time. I want to land a little bit more upright, show that full extension, and then come back down. Now, if I'm going over the box, the whole goal here is to make it as efficient as possible, obviously, but when I'm doing these, I'm trying to keep my hips as low as possible through the entire movement. So I'm not trying to jump up on top of the box, stand to full extension, turn, drop down the other side. As I'm coming up, I'm trying to land in a full squat. So you can see here, a 24-inch box, my hips are at this level. As I'm getting on top of the box, I'm trying to land here, so my hips aren't that much higher. And then as I come off, I'm making sure I'm not jumping off the other side, and it's just a quick drop, step down or a drop down with both feet at the same time, but trying to keep your hips at that same level as you're bouncing back and forth. All right, guys, now we're gonna talk a little bit about everyone's favorite, some barbell cycling. This is, the light to mid weights, touch and goes, bigger sets in a Metcon where we are focused on speed. The movements can be, power, squat, whatever you want. But the thing that I think a lot of people overlook, and something that I paid a lot of attention to, is not just how easy it was on the way up when everyone sees as like the work being done, lifting the weight, But then bringing the weight down, I looked at that almost as equally important. I'm not just at the top of my lift focused on, all right, touch the plates to the ground and go again. I'm focused on hitting positions the whole way down. So once the bar is overhead, I'm locked out, good rep. As I'm coming down, I'm doing everything mirror image of what I did on the way up. So what I commonly see is people from here, the next position they're concerned about is when the bar is on the ground and then you start their lift again. But if you go straight from overhead to the ground, odds are that bar is moving so fast that you can't slow it down or brace it without getting pulled out of position. The bar is going to be way out in front of you. It can be done, I've seen it done, but for 99.9% of people, we want to hit positions on the way down. So what I mean by that is from overhead, we're focused on dropping our elbows first, especially in a snatch grip, dropping the elbows, trying to get the bar to the clavicles as well as you can. And then once you're kind of maxed out there, then you're focusing on keeping the bar close and pivoting the elbows around while keeping that bar against your chest. Then straightening your arms. I like to have a little bit of a brush on my hips. I don't want to stop on my hips. Just brush by, let your hips bleed off some of that speed off the bar. Then I'm going into my hinge, and then I'm going into my bent knees. So it's another huge thing you see a ton of people do when they're cycling is they take their knees out of the equation, boom, and then they're just gonna blow out their hamstrings. I really like to keep, even if I was snatching 75 pounds, try to keep my technique the same as if I'm trying to snatch 300. So hit your positions on the way down to keep that bar in nice and close, and then it's gonna set you up for success on that next lift. So you're not starting your next snatch with the bar out here. As you're coming down, you feel that bar dragging down your thighs, down over your knees, and then boom, like the end of your one rep is the perfect starting position for the next one. Kind of a funny story of how I looked at this, and this wasn't just with barbell cycling, it was with a lot of movements of this is gonna sound silly. When I went out on the floor, I looked at my energy as like the life bar on like Sega Genesis Street Fighter, like any video arcade game where you have your life bars up in the corner. And there were a ton of guys that were stronger than me. Their one rep maxes were higher than mine, but they weren't as efficient. They weren't as familiar. Their muscle memory wasn't as ingrained, whatever it was. But I looked at that as they can move as quickly as me, but they're using 2 points of energy for every rep that they complete. Whereas for me, just because I'm more efficient on the way down, my technique's a little bit more dialed in on the way up, I'm only using 1 point per rep. So yeah, there were a lot of scenarios where it's 10 reps. It's like, yeah, if they might be able to beat me because they can just grip it and rip it. But as soon as it's anything over that 10 reps, that's where, the endurance starts paying off, the efficiency starts paying off. So if you're using less energy per rep on the way up and on the way down, it's only a matter of time before you start pulling ahead. Say I'm doing a workout like Randy, where it's 75 snatches at a super light weight at 75 pounds. With a workout like that, I'm gonna choke in my grip on the bar, probably about 2 inches on each side. So it's gonna look a little bit narrow for a snatch grip, but just with that amount of volume and that speed I'm moving at, I wanna just have a more stable, comfortable lockout position. It's gonna be a pull from a little bit lower on the thigh, but with that amount of volume, it's gonna help your wrists. And it helps you keep the hook grip sunk in a little bit better. For something light like 75 pounds, I'm keeping the hook grip in all the way through the lift, on the turnover, on the way back down. That's another reason why I'm bringing in my hands, is so that the bar can hang a little bit lower in my fingers. So I'm not at such an aggressive angle of attack, a little bit more comfortable. I can sink in a bit of a deeper hook grip. And then with a weight like 75 pounds, I'm trying to keep my hands as loose as possible. I'm really trying to use my thumb as a strap, let the bar hang down low on my knuckles to really try to preserve that grip. If I'm cycling touch and goes, say, 185 to 205, something like that, I can still cycle, good sets of power, squat, whatever. But as I turn over at the top, because it's a heavier weight, I'm gonna have my hands in a more natural snatching grip, so a little bit wider. So it's gonna make it really challenging or painful to hold the hook grip. So I'm letting go of the hook grip, just like I do when I snatch normally. Let go of the hook grip on the turnover. Once I catch it, I'm good. But then as I'm cycling that bar, as I'm bringing it back down, that's when I'm re-sinking the hook grip as I'm in that turnover and that bar is kind of just free falling for a second. What I think you want to avoid, and I see some people do, is from here, they almost throw the bar up higher in the air so that they can re-grip it overhead. And it's just creating more distance that bar is free falling, more momentum that you now have to spend energy to stop. So try to get a feel for that bar, where you're turning over, resync that hook grip, get your arms straight right away, hinge at the hips, and then don't forget to bend your knees. As you're going through barbell cycling, your breath is going to be very, very important. Barbell cycling is one of those sneaky traps where, when you're fresh and you're only doing a couple reps, it's like you can hold your breath through it and you feel perfectly fine. But now if you're in a workout, you're coming off one of the machines, you're breathing heavy, now it's a totally different ball game. So what I like to focus on is where's going to be the best spot to get my inhale when I'm weightless and I'm not holding a load. So right from lockout, as that bar is coming down and it's kind of free falling, as weightless as it's going to be in the movement, that's when I'm doing my big inhale. Bar hits the hips. As soon as I start bending my knees, I'm bracing. So as soon as I feel those plates touch the ground, I'm turning it over. So holding my breath and bracing through that part. And then it's as the bar is coming off my hips, I'm notorious. I know a lot of other people, like it sounds like you're barking when you lift, and it's just like at the top, the boom, quick exhale, get it locked out, finish that exhale once it's overhead, and then big inhale as you're coming down. Huge pointer here. This is just kind of funny. It's like one of my biggest pet peeves. When people are doing touch and goes, best place to breathe if you are doing touch and goes, if there's a benefit to hanging onto the bar, is overhead. Stack all your joints. You don't have too much weight on your chest, and you're probably able to get a pretty normal free breath. What I hate seeing people do is bring it down to their hips, sit here for 10 seconds, take 5 breaths, and then go for a touch and go. If you're stopping at your hips and there's no benefit to it being unbroken or no requirement for it to be unbroken, just drop the bar. Go completely weightless, grab a couple breaths, and then start your next lift. But if you do have to breathe, you have to pause mid-rep, it's overhead, elbows locked out, wrists over the shoulders, and just try to breathe freely. All right, guys, that's it for all the tips, tricks, and insights for today. Let me know what you think. If there's anything else that you want me to cover, let me know in the comments, and we'll make sure that there's a volume 2. Have a good one.